Good morning, everyone. Please have your seat because we're gonna start the the courses of today. Please, everyone, take your seat because we're gonna start.
Ini nanti mereka ngomong aku bisa dengar nggak Mbak ini?
Bisa Ibu, nanti akan kami berikan mikrofon.
Oke. Ini kayaknya backlight, jadi saya melihat mereka tuh gelap gitu.
Iya Bu, ini konsep gedung yang baru.
Oh.
Low energy, green energy. We use sunlight to make our room looks bright actually, but to be honest, backlight.
Oh, iya. Gak ada lampunya ya berarti? Bisa dinyalain nggak lampunya?
Ya, please, untuk dinyalakan lampunya.
Kalau backlight ada lampunya mungkin agak sedikit kelihatan gitu loh Mas.
Oke.
Coba.
atau Mbak MC, Mbak.
Tapi mereka bisa ngelihat screen kan?
Bisa Ibu.
Oke. Ya, much better. Bisa kelihatan.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to our esteemed participants, distinguished guests, and keynote speaker in this room and also in the meeting. I extend my warmest regards and wish you excellent health and enthusiasm today. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. First of all, I would like to praise God because of His mercy we can gather again in this opportunity. Welcome back again with me, Nurma, as the master of ceremony of this day. Commence our activity on the third day of the 7th summer course program with the
Recording
theme
in
Managing
progress.
Landscapes and Forest Dependent Communities, to bridge the future, learning across governance regimes. Continued our lecture session today, which will discuss 4 topics as well. Each topic will be presented in 60 minutes, followed by question and answers session in 30 minutes. Then I would like to kindly give you a confirmation regarding the speakers today. The speakers will be present online in a Zoom meeting and also in this room later. Kindly pay attention to both of the methods in order to make understanding well and interactive discussion. Furthermore, allow me to read the agenda for this day's session. We're going to proceed to the first topic with understanding environmental rule of law related to climate change in Asia. Then we're going to have a coffee break in 30 minutes. Then we move to the second session is precision forestry for monitoring forest carbon stock. Then we're going to have a lunch box. We'll continue our activities again with the third topic that is managing community landscape reconstruction damage by the northern Kyushu torrential rain disaster, lesson from Japan. And last but not least, our topics today is about managing pests and disease in fast-growing species. Before we're really going to proceed to our first topic session of this day, allow me to read a brief introduction of our keynote speakers today that already in Zoom meeting. So Dr. Linda is a senior research fellow at Assoc and also at an associate professor of law in Universitas Gadjah Mada. She is an internationally recognized scholar in Indonesian international environmental law, and her research has established her as a leading expert who is frequently consulted by the Indonesian government and international organizations. Her research focuses on international environmental issues such as climate change, REDD+, land use issues, and customary or adat issues. Dr. Linda was a member of the delegation leading Indonesia's negotiations of the Paris Agreement on climate change also. Besides of that, our moderator of this topic is Mr. Abdul. So Mr. Abdul is one of the staff in Social Economy Forestry Laboratory in Universitas Gadjah Mada. And Mr. Abdul recently on his research of silvopastoral in Wilayah Indonesia. More than that, Mr. Abdul is the president of Indonesian Agro-Silvopasture Research and Development Center Association. Without further ado, we proceed to our first topic of this day, which is understanding environmental rule of law related to climate change in Asia, which will be presented by Dr. Linda Yanti Sulistiawati from National University of Singapore and will be moderated by Mr. Muhammad Abdul Rahman Subrata, Bachelor of Forestry and Master of Science. Please, everyone, pay attention and Dr. Linda and Mr. Abdul, please proceed to stage.
Okay. Thank you to our Master of Ceremony, Mbak Nurma, for giving me the floor. Greetings to all ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the first session of the day for the forestry summer course with the grand theme of managing forestry landscape and forest-dependent communities to bridge the future, learning across governance regimes. Before we start, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Abdul. You can call me Mas Dul or Dul. Yeah, I'm from the Social Forestry and Economic Laboratory, Forest Management Department, University of Gadjah Mada. Today, I will be the moderator for this session. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, when we discuss about climate change in Asia, deep decarbonization, low carbon economy, fairness, framework politics, technology, socio-cultural, and institutional norms will be mentioned. Trade-offs between ecology and financial revenue has always been an interesting topic to discuss. The complexity forces trial and error practices to find out the most suitable policies to achieve sustainable development goals. And it is now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. And in this beautiful morning, together with us, the expert of global climate change, Dr. Linda Yanti Sulistiawati from the National University of Singapore, who will give us an incredible lecture with excellent topic of understanding environmental rule of law related to climate change in Asia. To Dr. Linda, you have 60 minutes to present your presentation, followed by 30 minutes Q&A session after. Without further ado, Dr. Linda, the floor is yours. Please give applause.
Oh. Thank you. Good morning, students. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. All right. Yeah, so you can call me Linda, and I'm originally also a teacher in Gajah Mada University, where you are now. But because like currently I'm on a research trip, I'm a senior research fellow at the Asia Pacific Center for Environmental Law in National University of Singapore. That's why I cannot be with you like physically now. I would love to be with you, but it's just like the timing is not quite match. But so sorry that you had to move chairs, because I would like to see you guys in person, like without the backlight. So it's like, you know, we are meeting in person, although we're doing it by Zoom. So yeah, so I've been researching on international environmental law, involved in several international negotiations as the delegation of Indonesia. And also currently I'm the lead author of the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I'm the lead author for the Assessment Report 6, Working Group 3 on Mitigation. So it sounded like, wow, lead author, really cool. But actually, there are 300 other lead authors in the world for IPCC. Unfortunately, in Indonesia, we only have 9. But like for China, for example, they have 69 authors, and Indonesia, we currently only have 9. So we're hoping like in the future, like for the assessment report 6, we'll have more. Okay, so if we can have the mic ready, I would like the students to have this lecture more lively. Can we have the mic ready to be passed on? Hello? Hello?
Yes, hello.
Yeah, can we have the mic ready to be passed on? So, because I will ask some question and would like the students to respond.
Yes, yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right. So, okay, everybody ready? This is like very early morning in Jogja, I know, but that's all right. That's a good time to learn about climate change. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen and I'm gonna ask some question to you, and hopefully, some of you would already have prior knowledge of climate change. Okay. So, does any of you know what is climate change? Anyone? Just raise your hand and then we'll give you the mic and then.
Yes, silahkan Mr. Abu.
Okay, Abu.
Abu.
Where-
Good morning. This morning here, I don't know what is in Singapore. But
It's also morning. I'm just 1 hour away. Okay, Abu, where are you from?
I'm from Pakistan.
Okay, great. So, you know anything about climate change?
Yeah, I know. I just give you a general overview. I know. Change is the change. I would say the gradual change in the weather, which disrupt environment and disrupt the nature.
All right.
And I won't just go deep in this, like greenhouse effects, those things. But yeah, it's the change in the weather and which disrupt or disturb the nature. That's what I.
Okay. Thank you, Abu. Anybody else would like to add from what Abu has just said? So changing the nature that disrupt our everyday living. Any additional comments for Abu?
Okay, so here in the main causes is I have studied some about climate change.
Oh, Abu is going to add himself. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, the pollution is the main reason of climate change.
Okay.
And we all are responsible for climate change, and it affects each and every creatures in this world.
Okay, thank you, Abu. So yeah, what, like, the key things that we need to know about climate change is, first is humanly induced. So it's from, it came from human activities, right? And then it is like what Abu was saying, it's a gradual change. So when people are saying, oh, heat wave in Europe or heat wave in Korea is a sign of climate change, I'm not saying that they're wrong, but scientifically, climate change is measured over a period of time. You cannot say like suddenly there's like boiling temperature and then it's climate change. Climate change is measured over a period of time. It can be 100 years, it can be 50 years. You just need to see the trend of how the temperature goes from one point to another point, right? Even some meteorological research are saying even a 10-year data is not quite sufficient to measure climate change. You need a longer period of data to understand that there has been, or the evidence of climate change is real. Okay, so far everybody is following me? Yes, good. Okay, all right. Just tell me if I'm speaking too fast, or if you don't understand anything, just let me know. I will try to slow down and sort of explain to you. So the slide that you're seeing right now on your screen is part of the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Changes report that that we made this year in 2023, right? So this is the current status and trends of what we have of the global surface temperature. So it has increased tremendously, right, in 2011 to 2020 in comparison to 1850 and 1900. So you see, it's like it's like a stairways going to, well, not heaven. It's just like stairways going to hell, because it's going to be really, really hot here, like predicted to be hot right here, right? This warming is unequivocally caused by GHG emission. I'm pretty sure like most of you would already know that GHG is greenhouse gases emission, and this includes CO2, this includes methane, this includes other GHG gases due to human activities. So when you hear about climate change again in the future, you'll know, okay, so this is induced by human activities that emits GHG emission, that over time, right, over time causes the temperature to increase, and they increase tremendously. Okay, is this okay for everybody? Yes? Thumbs up? No? Okay, all right. So next, what we see here are changes and impacts that, no matter where you are, whether you are from Pakistan or Japan or China or the United States or Cameroon, it affects every region, right? This affects like the whole planet. We observe it in extremes like heat waves, reduced food security, and increased human morbidity and mortality. So I wanna hear from you guys, because you guys are from everywhere, right? Is there something that you noticed that has changed during your lifetime, of course, and you think it was because of climate change? Anyone? Maybe I heard somebody's from Africa. From anyone from Africa?
From Cameroon?
From Cameroon? You want to say something?
Good morning.
Good morning.
You can change it with this microphone, please.
Hello.
I can't hear him.
My name is Nanda and I'm from Cameroon.
Okay. Hello, Nanda.
Good morning.
Good morning.
In terms of climate change in my country, it's mostly the disruption of the weather, because we have two seasons, the rainy season and the dry season in my country. And usually we know that the rainy season starts from the month of April to the month of like July or August. Then the dry season we take over from November to February. But with the climate change, we don't really know when is the dry season. You think that you're in the dry season, but rain just appear like this. And in the rainy season, there's a dry period. And in the northern part of my country, and this situation is really disturbing mostly farmers, because we mostly practice traditional farming with no technical irrigation system, only based on
the nature, on rain and
And in the northern part of my country, that is like close to the Sahel, because the south of my country is forest, equatorial forest. Yeah. The northern part, we have savanna. And when we are going to the north, we are going toward the Sahel and other neighboring countries in the northern area, inside the Sahara Desert. So the main trait of the main observation of climate change there is like the advancement of desert.
So the deserts are getting larger in area?
Yes, the areas are getting drier. So dry season are getting harsh, and when rainy season is coming, it's also catastrophic with inundation everywhere. So it's like extreme weather. When it's rainy, it's terrible with inundation everywhere, and when it's dry, there's no water. All rivers dry in the Sahara, in the Sahel area.
Yeah, I suppose it's very extreme, like very extreme changes of the season, right? And also very extreme drought.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Nanda. Yeah. Is there other students who would like to share what they perceived in their own countries? Somebody from ASEAN, maybe?
Hello.
Yes.
I'm Kia from Thailand.
Okay. Hi, Kiev.
The main problem that I experience in Thailand is that the increasing of temperatures in Thailand. So sorry. Yeah. So it is from hot, it extremely hot like nowadays. Yeah. And yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, when it's hot, it's crazy hot. Like you can feel like the sun really shines through, right? And it's really also humid, I would imagine, in Thailand, right? Yeah, just like in like most of the Southeast Asia. For those of you who are not from Southeast Asia, aside from extreme heat, we are also experiencing the changes of monsoon seasons, because we have monsoons here in Southeast Asia, maybe similar to the dry season and rainy season in Cameroon. Uh, it's just everything is out of whack. Like sometimes it rains really hard when we're supposed to have dry season, or the sun shines really hot during the rainy season. And also, what we experience, I'm pretty sure you have this too in all over Asia, is typhoons. We have a lot of typhoons in the Philippines, Indonesia, of course, and also parts of like Singapore, Brunei. We also have like really hard typhoons coming in unexpectedly, right? Just because of the changes of climate. So if you go see your screen again, you'll see that there are changes and impacts. The first one is water availability and food production, like what Nanda was saying, not just in Cameroon, but this is all over the world because the water availability is less. Yeah, I imagine in Africa it would be more extreme than what we experience here in Southeast Asia, but it's almost, it's almost worldwide. Agriculture, crop production is very impacted because of the changes of the climate. Also animal stocks, because agriculture production is less, the farm animals didn't get enough food, and then their health and productivity is also down, right? And then fisheries yields and aquaculture production is also less. So that is only for water availability and food production, right? And then while this one is obstructed, right? And then it directly influence our health and well-being, right? We're just out from the pandemic because of infectious diseases. There's heat. Specifically in this part of the world, not only COVID-19, but the climate-induced infectious diseases are malaria and dengue. So all of that is also very harmful. And then malnutrition, harm from wildfire, mental health, and displacement. This is also very common in Asia and the Pacific because of their livelihood, like where their houses and where they live, their space have been inundated, so they need to move. Some of these are called, some of us called them like climate migration. Some of us called them climate refugee. So they are already here. And governments and all stakeholders alike need to find solutions for this. And then we see here also cities, settlements, and infrastructure. When you have floods, when you have typhoon, when you have damages to infrastructure, this also damages the key to economic sectors, right? And then you have inflation, and then you have, bankruptcy, etc., etc. For biodiversity and ecosystem, you'll see pressures on terrestrial ecosystem, freshwater ecosystem, and ocean ecosystem, right? There are places where the ocean is so hot that the biota inside the ocean, like just died because they can't survive anymore. Okay, so that's the changes and impacts. So if you go to the reports that we made in IPCC, the 6th assessment report, you also see progress that's are already mapped. So this is what we have done, like during all these years. We have adaptations and mitigation. Anybody know what adaptation and mitigation are in terms of climate change? Yes, I saw a hand there. I saw a hand next to Nanda, right? Or is it Nanda? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Nanda.
Okay, go ahead.
Uh, adaptation is more like helping people to cope with the effect of climate change.
Mm-hmm.
Like if climate change is affecting their agriculture, maybe we can help them with like irrigation or like some agricultural practices that can help them like to maintain their crops. And in terms of if there's inundation, maybe people can build houses that are resistant to like flooding.
Yeah.
And kind of example of adaptation. But
Okay.
mitigation is like addressing the root causes of climate change, because we know climate change is due to like the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So mitigation will like try to reduce that concentration, maybe by planting trees. We know that through photosynthesis, trees have the capacity to like absorb and sequestrating carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, reducing its concentration in the atmosphere, and then reducing the climate change itself, not only the effect. So adaptation is like coping to the effect, but mitigation is addressing the root causes to reduce climate change itself.
Very good.
That's
yeah. Thank you, Nanda. So yeah, so just like Nanda was saying, and what you see on the screen, these are the mapped out progress of adaptation, including gaps and challenges. You can see here that there are human system and ecosystem and what we have done towards it, right? And like what kind of region that's already doing them, right? So these are what we can do to adapt to the challenges of climate change. So, despite the progress, adaptation gaps will remain and will grow at current rates of implementation. It depends on where you are. It's not that easy to adapt to when your village is inundated. Your adaptation is you just have to move, right? Like if you're from Vanuatu, you sort of have to realize, okay, mitigation is out of questions and adaptation is even harder. So you just need to survive. So the current global financial flow for adaptation is insufficient, especially in developing countries, right? When you are in developing countries and you would like to get adaptation funding from developed countries or from donor organizations, what you do is you have to apply to GCF. GCF is the Green Climate Fund, and they will look at your proposal and then make assessments, etc., etc. It would take 1 year before their decision whether they will fund you or not, and then it will take even longer for them to sort of, if you are accepted and they would give you the money, it will take even longer than 1 year. And this is mitigation, like what Nanda was saying. Mitigation is to sort of how to mitigate the damage that's already done, right? Like how to reduce emission, like how countries are coming together and sign this Paris Agreement, and what are we doing with the Paris Agreement. We will talk about that. And however, international research, regional research, and national research are saying that the policies that currently are done by by states are not sufficient to achieve NDCs, and that the financial flow is also short, right? It falls short to the level needed that is promised in the Paris Agreement, which is 100 billion US dollar per year. Okay. So far, any questions from just the background of climate change? No, everybody's good, yeah? Okay. So we will then speak about the IPCC. So wait, okay. So what you have seen, like the reports that, you know, in a glance, it's made by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I'm pretty sure most of your states are parties to the IPCC. It's an organization which was established in 1998 and sort of give the science background of what is climate change. Because in the beginning, we didn't know that, you know, what is causing all this whacked climate and all this typhoons and tornadoes were coming from ourselves, right? Until we have all this research all over the world, but nobody was given the authority to sort of compile them together and assess them. Okay, this is what's going on. So the WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, and the United Nations Environmental Program in 1998 decided, okay, let's make one then. They made an organization. It's a government organization. So it's an intergovernmental panel on climate change. So what you see on your screens are the reports that are made by the organization, by the IPCC. And you can see since 1990 until 2003, we already have the first assessment report, the second assessment report, and then third assessment report. So FAR, SAR, and TAR. And then in the fourth assessment report, they're like, okay, we cannot have another FAR, so they have an AR4. Assessment report 4, assessment report 5, assessment report 6, which is launched this year in 2023. In between, you'll have what we call special reports. So there are special reports on ocean, special reports on land, and special report on 1.5 global warming, right? If you've seen the Oscar won movie by Al Gore, you also know that it's based on assessment report 4 that is made by the IPCC, and it's also won a Nobel Prize. Okay, so in contrary to popular belief, IPCC does not do research on its own. So what it does is that it compiles all the research that are spread all over the world, right? And then assess this research based on comprehensive, objective, and open and transparent basis, the scientific, technical, and social economic information that is relevant to the basic of risks of human-induced climate change, its potential impacts, and option for adaptation and mitigation. So when we're in IPCC, maybe in the future you would like to be an author in IPCC, you realize that scientists are the authors in IPCC, but governments are the one who approves the reports. So when you see the reports, you understand that they are already approved by the government, which are the parties of IPCC, which you can tell most governments are not scientists, which means what you see is already watered down. So much so that is that it is palatable for the governments. Yeah. So if we say there's global warming, the reality is it's probably more than just warming. It probably, like what the UNSG was saying, last week, it's global boiling, right? So what you see on your screen, like on the right, is the authors and review editors whom are scientists and experts from all over the world. And on the left here are, the bosses, which are, governments from 195 states. And then you have a working group, and they work together in these working groups: science-based for working group 1, mitigation-based for working group 2, and working group 3, and adaptation-based for working group 2. And then we have a task force on national greenhouse gas inventories, right? So policy and science work together to provide rigorous and balanced scientific information on climate change. These are the authors, like what I told you, then 300 of us. And then, these are just the process of how lead authors and authors are selected from the nomination of the government to the IPCC. Okay, so I suppose, okay, so this is where we sort of make the report. Like, we had a plenary that is agreed, like approved by the government. And then the reports, like what you saw earlier, was AR6, Assessment Report 6, and then released and publicly reported publicly. And then it is hoping to inform, and it's presented to policymaker at national and international level. And then after that, the IPCC would have to do outreach, which is presenting the reports with variety of stakeholders, including like what currently we're doing right now, is like telling students, academicians, business, NGOs that this is what IPCC is doing. Okay, so they are, I would say, one of the main stakeholders in climate change. And you sort of see, if you read any research on climate change, they will sort of quote or refer to reports that has been published by the IPCC, because it's the most authoritative publication, I suppose, in currently that in the approval of the governments of the world. Okay, so this is our last meeting in India pre-COVID. I'm here, but because I'm short, you can't see me. See? Okay. Okay. All right. So, any questions so far for IPCC? Okay. So now we are going to, I suppose I should have more time because we started a little late, right? But we are going to go to the main meat of my lecture, which is the law itself. I'm a professor of law at Gadjah Mada University, and this is where we're going to sort of give you an update of what we do in climate change. So all this conference on human and the environment started in 1972. And then gradually, I think the big mother of agreements in terms of climate change is 2015, the Paris Agreement, which it replaces the Kyoto Protocol, which elapsed in 2012. Right? So during 2013 to 2015, we really were looking for, one main agreement that would be able to put all the countries together and give us like a good guidance of what we should do for climate change, right? So what you see on your screen is probably you've seen it a lot, how the GHG gases are emissions are continued to rise across the globe, right? And these are the three main agreements that we have in climate change. The first one is Kyoto Protocol. The second one is the Copenhagen Accord, and the third one is the Paris Agreement. So they all come from this organization, which is under the UN, and it's called the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, right? The UNFCCC is giving authorities for a framework convention, agreements, and protocols under the agreement. So when you look at Kyoto Protocol, for example, it's very technical and it's very detailed, because by the title you can tell that it is a technical agreement. In opposed to, for example, Paris Agreement, that's very, very different in terms of format, right? So when we look at the Kyoto Protocol, it has the same objective as the UNFCCC, right? The main objective is the same. But however, there were a lot of challenges and criticism towards the Kyoto Protocol on structure, on the approach, and on the changes, right? The structure was Kyoto. So all parties were not looked at in the same level, because they have Annex 1, which are developed countries, and these are OECD countries and economies in transition. And the second one is Annex 2 or non-annex, which are developing countries. So these two groups of states have different obligations. They put, like Kyoto put a lot of specific reporting obligation for Annex 1. But on the other hand, for non-annex country, there's no reporting obligations. So you can tell there are sort of, how do you call it? A sort of unbalanced relation between the developed and developing countries. And that's probably why Kyoto didn't last very long. When there were suggestion to make it into Kyoto Protocol 2, most of the state didn't vote for it. So Kyoto also was using top-down approach, right? It imposed on individual targets for Annex 1 countries, lacks of greater ambitions, and also there's very weak enforcement mechanism. Canada walked out from Kyoto. Japan didn't walk out, but apparently they also didn't do much under Kyoto, right? The US and China was very hard during negotiation for Kyoto Protocol, but they didn't sign it. So like these are like the biggest emitters of the world. Okay. And then there's also myopic changes in Kyoto, like very short term and not, not looking at like with great visions. There are also problematic mechanisms under Kyoto, which are the CDM, the Clean Development Projects, and the ETS, the emission trading schemes. We're not going to go in depth because my time is limited. And then, like, what are the roles of international law instruments in climate change then, right? So Copenhagen was paving the way for Paris, although people say it's deemed failure, but somehow it gives a way to like a better agreement than what we had previously, right? So in 2015, states came together in Le Bourget in Paris and then decided, okay, we agree on this agreement. It's hailed as groundbreaking, unprecedented, a new hope, a salient evolution in climate politics, even, right? But it does sort of give like solutions to what we could not do during Kyoto, right? It's not top down only. It has bottom up approaches. It has financial, technological, and capacity building support, and it has greater involvement from non-state actors. You see here the top down is the global stock take, which will start this year in 2023. And then the bottom up approach is the NDC, the nationally determined contribution. International support is also highlighted. So developing countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, Cameroon, Thailand would be able to access this 100 billion US dollars in Article 9.5 of the Paris Agreement. Although up until now, that money is not yet realized. Healthier countries, for example, China and Qatar and maybe Singapore, right, are invited to make voluntary contributions. So there's no Annex 1, Annex 2, or non-annex, but countries are encouraged, right, to know where they are. So when I said earlier the non-state actors, I hope all of you have already heard about Greta, right? She's like this young girl who initially 4 years ago fought by herself uh, uh, to like at first she attacked her own national government, but then now gradually she's like, okay, I'm going to attack the UN because the UN just didn't get it, right? They don't get it. And apparently during those 4 years, this movement, this youth movement, has been grown very, very big. Like people wouldn't see it 4 years ago. But even during COVID, we'll see this youth movements that kids want climate justice all over the world. Even in this part of the world, we see very, very strong youth movements who sort of understand what's going on and request their government to do so, right? And then the other non-state actors that's also very, very important in terms of climate change are the economic actors. And these are companies, right? You'll see some of them are already woke, right? Levi's, Canon, Quaker Oats, McDonald's, even you'll see like less straws, or they didn't give you straws until you ask them. But of course, the cups are still plastic. Anyway, like most of them are understanding or have the awareness to climate change and tries to incorporate climate conscious activities within their business model. Yeah. So the Paris Agreement invited all of this, and it's open for not just states but also all non-state actors. So this is like the question that we heard a lot when legal scholars are meeting non-legal scholars or meeting community at large, and when we say, is the Paris Agreement legally binding, right? What can you do with the Paris Agreement? Is it legally binding? Yeah, so Paris Agreement is legally binding because it has a unique legal structure, which some article create legal obligations, but other express recommendations. If you go through the Paris Agreement, you'll see. But failure to meet NDC or breaching treaty provision doesn't warrant punitive sanction. However, every year that they have the conference of parties, like these representatives of states would have to report what they have done, and they'll get, quote unquote, naming and shaming during the meetings, right? Secondly, it's a mix of hard and soft law, right? The Paris Agreement is very complex. In opposition to the Kyoto Protocol, because Kyoto was very rigid. It has legal consequences. However, effectively deterring consequences are not necessarily legal. Legal form should not be the focus of enforcement, but whether it is or not an effective tool to mitigate climate change. And then justiciability, whether or not you can use it in court. This has been proven that climate litigation cases has taken places in countries, not internationally yet, but in countries. So we'll see Julia versus the state. We'll see many actions in India, for example, the National Green Tribunals, and we also see cases all over the world, even in Indonesia. Although the court was in Switzerland, but in 2023, a group of Indonesian launched a lawsuit to a cement industry that is causing climate impacts. Okay, I guess I'll stop here and open the Q&A session if there's any questions from the students.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Linda, for sharing a very insightful presentation with us. Ladies and gentlemen, please, if you have a question, can your hand and please introduce your name and also institution and also where are you come from, okay, before you're flooring your question.
Hello, Mbak Linda. Morning.
Morning.
Can you, yeah. Okay, great presentation. My name is Randy Hamza. I'm from Bangka Belitung Province, as the biggest tin production in Indonesia. Indonesia is the second biggest tin mining in the world after China. Yeah, it's a great presentation, Mbak Linda. Thank you. I'm quite interested to your presentation. I'm quite interested to the topics about the challenges of the climate change impact and the climate justice in Asia. I do believe, and we do believe that it's interconnected to the with the what happened in the developed country. So I'm wondering, Malinda, I have a question. Do you have any idea how to connect between the aspect of technicality, like what you have already presented, that there are many global forum or global agreement, they just focus on how the aspect of technicality, but we forget about the crucial context of the social. So how to connect the context of social and the technicality to solve the climate change problem in Asia. And then Malinda, second question, do you have any critics or how do you have any idea to criticize the global agreement. As we know, there are so many smart cutting edge ID from the global north about how to solve the climate change, but it tends to see the Asia developing countries like Asia, Africa, even Latin America, just a troublemaker, as if the developed countries like US, Canada, China, they as a trouble solver, solving like that. I'm quite angry, and I disagree because there are so many global agreement, global consensus, but they just make so many marginal people in Asia, in developing countries, in Latin America or in Africa. So that's the second question. So last one, just 1 minute, and then I see the aspect of economic tends to be dominant, more dominant, Mbak Linda, rather than how the social cultural aspect when we talk about the global warming, about the climate change, but tends to be more technical, tends to be economical, and then that's just more profitable for the developed countries rather than the developing countries. Thank you, Mbak Linda. Sorry.
No need, no need to apologize. Okay, so I think your question is very interesting, Reza. Yeah. Okay, thank you for the question. So I'm guessing most of you are also interested in all of this, right? So your first question was on social elements, but also I think it should be merged with your third question on economic aspects and also cultural aspects in terms of climate change. Okay, so but however, I would like to answer your second question first because I think it's the most adorable question that everybody would want to know the answer, right? It's developed versus developing countries when we're talking about international global negotiation, whether it is climate change, whether it is forestry, whatever it is, uh, but let's focus on climate change. So climate change, as we started this lecture this morning, is measured over time. So when it's measured in the 1900s up to the year of 2000, right? It went across 100 years. Whom do you think have already had the technology to produce the most GHG emission during that time? Developing countries or developed countries, right? So the Industrial Revolution, if you like close your eyes and went back to your history lessons in high school, you'd understand the Industrial Revolution in Europe happened in 1917, and then it spiraled toward the industrialization in the developed countries. So that's where they started to use fossil fuels. They started to use, extraction industries in order to be able to start it like what we've seen right now: transportation, building, everything, including agriculture, right? So this is like decades old of debates in the international global climate change negotiation: developed countries versus developing countries. So there is an international environmental law principle that is called the common but differentiated responsibility. What does that mean? It means that wherever you are in terms of development, you have this responsibility. But this responsibility is not the same. Cameroon as a state does not have the same responsibility as Japan. Indonesia as a state that was just independence in 1945, which is what, 70 years old, more or less, right? It does not have the same responsibility towards GHG emission as the US, that's already been independent for 100 plus years. Is everybody following me? Yeah. So the common but differentiated responsibilities for states are saying that, okay, everybody, you have this responsibility of lowering your GHG emission, right? But differently. Like the developed countries should have more stringent goals, like a better outcome when we compare it to developing countries. Why? Because they still need to develop their economy, their social, and their cultural aspects, right? Although all of them needs to be very, very careful of their development activities. And this would include other principles, such as, for example, what you hear a lot, sustainable development, right? You can develop, but taking care of the conservation, taking care of the emission, taking care of, your waste, etc., etc., and the future generation rights. So the cases that I quoted earlier, the Julia versus state case and the Indonesian case versus the Holcim company, cement company, was quoting the future generation rights. Why? What is the future generation principle? The future generation principle is mainly saying, let's make sure that our children's children's would have the same level, or if we can, even better level of the health in the environment as what we have right now, right? And and that can only be done by us now. We don't know, maybe not your children yet, but but they will be there in the future, hopefully, or your neighbor children, if you don't want to have children, right? So somebody else's children or our common grandkids would have the same water that we have, the same air that we have, the same nature that we have, or even better in the future. But how is that possible for developing countries like us, right? Like for Indonesia, Thailand, Cameroon, the Philippines, how are we going to do that? With the help of developed countries. Developed countries has their CBDR, common but developing CBDR, common but differentiated responsibility to help developing countries. How is it? How would they help? With financial support, right? With technological transfer, right? All kinds of things that we have already discussed earlier in terms of Paris Agreement. Okay, and that segues to my answer to your first and third question, Reza, in terms of the social, economic, and cultural aspects, because nothing in the world is by themselves. That includes climate change. When you're talking about climate change, it's not just technical. Why? Because in my personal experience doing research on climate change, I would go like my main research area is in Manggarai in Eastern Nusa Tenggara, which is in the islands of Flores. When I asked the farmers there or the fishermen there if they know about climate change, none of them would know. Not like you, not like Abu or Nanda, who would already know, oh yeah, this is climate change, blah blah. So how is that possible? Because the terminology of climate change is for academics. So how do you ask farmers? How do you ask fishermen? You would have to know their cultural and economic and social elements. You have to ask whether you have to go to the sea further as you did, 5 years ago now. So how far away do you have to, how long or how far away do you have to further fish in the sea, right? Or we can ask the farmer whether the rain now is harder in bigger drops and in lesser time than the rain that we had 10 years ago, right? Things like that, they could easily explain it to you, right? They could directly, because it's their day-to-day life, they can say, okay, this is what happened, this is how long I should go to the sea 5 years ago, I can only, I would only go for 2 hours and I can only already fish. Now I have to go forward to 5 hour, 10-hour trip, fishing trip in order to get the fish because there's no more fish within 2 hours of this island. So, things like that. It's their economical, is their cultural aspects, and also social elements. So losing livelihood, it's not just technical. Losing livelihood is everything, right? Uh it's losing your identity, really, not just losing finding way to make money, but also losing your identity because that's all you know, losing your house or where you grew up or where your ancestor has been buried. That's very social and cultural. So things like this is it's very intertwined when we are talking about climate change. One time I read a research about I don't know if you heard about this, but there is a research about early marriage for girls in Malawi. You know Malawi? It's a small island, small coastal island. So they're saying that there are practices of early marriages for girls in that country when the drought was too long. And then I completely say it's a climate justice, climate change case. Why? Because it's poverty. So the fathers or the family of those girls were selling these little girls to older gentlemen or to older rich people who has money to borrow money for them to farm or to go fishing in the sea. Right? So there's nothing such as, oh, yeah, climate change is very climate change. When you are saying climate change, then it is climate change. But it's not like that. You will understand that everything is interconnected, intertwined, and somehow one thing would cause spiraling other things that you didn't really know. Like, how would you know that climate change could cause early marriage cases, right? But it does. Okay, I hope that answers your question, Reza. Other questions?
Okay, please raise your hand. From Southeast Asia. I think from another region maybe. From from Asia Selatan ya. Okay, from South Asia, please. Abu.
Hello, Dr. Linda. Again, Abu from Pakistan.
Okay.
Thank you so much for this informative presentation in these global issues. And one of the not recently.
Oh, I can't hear.
Can you hear? Yeah. So, you are a kind of you are a professor in law department, and you already studied a lot about environmental laws about climate change. So my question here is that the laws which are international laws from organization, from other organization, it could be anything. So again, the question here is that these laws, why it just implement in some regions or in some continents and in some countries, because it affects every country. We are from the development countries. I'm from Pakistan. So most of people, they are dependent on agriculture. And this climate change, it affects each and every sector of GDP in our people. So like recent France is contributing to developing countries because we are responsible for the climate change. They are contributing in the form of money. But I think that is not enough. why like that? Okay, if I'm developing, I'm moving towards development, and I will give you money, and then you can, okay, you just conserve the trees and be careful about. I will just move forward towards technology. So how is it like you balance giving money and okay, you could just contribute towards natural resources conservation and these things. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Abu. In terms of international laws that we discussed earlier, they are international law, like Paris Agreement is an instrument in international environmental law. And are they being implemented in regions? Yes. Okay. So for an international law to be able to be implemented in national laws, right? The government of that specific state needs to be a party of the international law itself. For example, Paris Agreement and Pakistan, right? Is Paris Agreement being implemented in Pakistan? I would say yes, because Pakistan is a party of the Paris Agreement, which means Pakistan signed the agreement, the Paris Agreement. And also, it depends on the system, the legal system in Pakistan, whether or not the parliament needs to ratify the Paris Agreement into the national agreement. It can take both way. I don't know whether Pakistan is a monoism or dualism. If it's a monoism, then the parliament does not need to ratify the laws. It just goes straight away to the national law. But if it's a dualism, and then the parliament of the country needs to ratify the law, right? And then when it's ratified, or when it's already adopted into its national law, and then what? And then it's the responsibility of the states, governments, and citizens and stakeholders alike to implement that specific laws in their jurisdiction, right? Right. So, what about you're asking what, if I'm not mistaken, that's what my take is from your question. What developed countries are helping developing countries, right? If it's just money, then it's not enough. Yeah, I agree with you, because and this is already discussed also in the Paris Agreement. So it's not just financial support, although there's a big chunk in Article 6 of the Paris Agreement that is discussing about how this money can go through, right? Or manage, how this money can be managed, right? But there's also a big chunk of the agreement that is talking about technological transfer, right? What can be transferred from more developed into developing countries, uh, capacity building, and this is not just technological transfer, but also the capacity of the human resources, right? And not just on technical things. It can also be on financial thing. It can also be on other knowledgeable things that can be built, right? And also the fourth thing that I think is also important is the just transition. Is a new, well, it's not a new thing, but it's a movement that is also recorded in the Paris Agreement, that people with livelihood on depending upon oil and gases or fossil fuels related, when they are requested to move to another line of work, to another livelihood, right? The governments, with the help of international community, would have to make sure that this transition is just and equitable for all of them. Imagine if you used to work in a coal company, right, in a coal mine, and then suddenly the coal mine has to be stopped because it's not environmentally friendly, it's producing too much GHG. and then what can you do, right? So they have to, the government and the companies, stakeholders, like whoever is responsible, they have to make sure that all the workers there are ready for this transition, right? They have to give you training, they have to give you understanding, they have to give you also probably seed money to start your own, like your new livelihood, whatever it is, or give you a new place to work at, things like that. These are very idealistic, I know. However, uh, these things needs to be implemented because they are already in the instruments, and states have obligations to implement them, right? And this is important, right? Because without these, like, developing countries would just do whatever they want based on our experiences, right? If they want to build mega structure, they just move people without giving them a new place to live, or they just give them new place to live, but they didn't really prepare for them. They didn't put in new schools, they didn't put in hospitals, they don't put in places of worships, etc. So this is part of the agreements itself. I hope this answers your question, Abu.
Okay, thank you. I think I will give special opportunity to develop country participant from Japan to give their perspective on the IPCC. Please raise your hand, maybe. Yeah. Give applause.
What should we talk?
Yeah.
What?
You can stand up. It's okay. What your perspective about the IPCC and also the share of responsibility and so on? It's up to you. Please give your perspective.
From Japan?
Yeah.
Hey, Masdu, I think it's okay if she's not comfortable sharing. Let's not force her.
I will not. I think.
So, question okay?
Yes. Okay. Question or opinion. Up to you.
I'd like to ask you. Sorry. Thank you for your presentation. And I'd like to ask you about intergeneration inequality, generation gap about climate change. So in Japan, I was born. Sorry, I'm from Japan. My name is Jun. So I was born in Japan, and from when I was born, I benefiting from technology in Japan. So I can't understand responsibility of this generation, because Japan children also responsibility in climate change, I think. So, なんて言えばいい?
Hello, I'm Saori. I'm from Japan too.
Okay, hi Saori.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. And yeah, it's so difficult. And yeah, I feel the climate change problem recently because Japan is so hot, and heavy rains and natural disasters happen every year. So, and yeah, I know the Japan has the responsibilities because Japan is one of the developed countries. So yeah, but I think the problem is so huge. So I know that we have to discuss about it, but I don't know what should I do in person. So I like to ask you if you have some ideas which I have to do in daily life for thinking about the climate change problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Incredible.
Okay, thank you, Sauri and June. I think the question is like one on intergenerational equity, and second is what can we do as youth of this generation, right? So, intergenerational equity is also a principle under international environmental law, and it's specifically like what we discussed earlier with the future generation is like giving what we have towards the future generation. So it is our responsibility to make sure of the longevity of our future generations in the planet, right? And does it intertwine with the common but differentiated responsibility principle? I would say yes, because the life of the people in this planet is continuous, right? So our past generation has the same burden as we are now in terms of intergenerational equity, and they needed actually, they probably didn't understand this, but they needed actually to make sure that we have all the things that that the nature gave them years ago, but they sort of not giving that to us, right? So that's why we're asking in legal term, we're asking for damages, right? We're asking for damages, what they can give for the present generation and also the future generation. And of course, we cannot go back in time and sort of say, okay, we are not going to make cars, or we're not going to make all this extractive industry. But, what can be done? So pragmatically, this is what they can do, right? This also answer probably the previous question when we are talking about GHG emission. Why are we talking about also financial support? Yeah, of course, because that's the most pragmatic thing that we can ask for, right? That's the most possibly support that we can receive. Aside from that, we're also asking for technological transfer. We're also asking for capacity building and just transitions. Yeah. There's another thing about loss and damage, but it's also like very, very technical and very detailed, and it's very hard to explain in a short time. And about Saudi, I think I get this. I get these questions a lot from the younger generations about what can we do. We know all this. What can you do? In your daily life, I think it's very simple, right? In my international environmental law class, I give students bonus points for students who brings tumbler to class. You know why? Because students buy coffee or whatever drinks that they buy, water, right? At least like one bottle, maybe two bottles, or one bottle of water and one coffee cup a day. And then they come in disposable single-use plastics. You know how long it will take for them to to degrade in this planet? 500 billion years, right? It's a long time. In between that time, what do? We die and live again, die and live again. But these plastics stays there, and in developing countries, usually they just go and sit in landfills, right? And the landfills, like in Jogja, is having problem currently. I don't know if you guys noticed. It's been closed for a few days and now it's open again. But it's as tall as a 16-story building, and it's fallen off. And where do they go when it's fallen off and not managed? They go to rivers. It's leaking to the rivers and it's leaking to the ocean, and then it's just poisoning everything in between. With plastics and microplastics, and also it's already helping the community at large. That's one. Second thing, what can you do as youth? Just be mindful of what waste you can produce, right? And be mindful that everything you do has footprints and it has emissions. If you can walk, I suggest you to walk. Indonesians are very, very lazy. Just to buy like a bowl of bakso, like 500 meters away, they hop on their motorbike and, create emissions. If you can walk, walk. If you can take public transport, take public transports. If you have to take Grab or Gojek, share with your friends. So things like that, they look like simple things, but you can do it. Bring a tumbler from home. If you know you're going to buy takeaways from the restaurants, bring a lunchbox with you so you don't have to create more stuff, right? You don't have to create more plastic and plastic waste, right? Or after that, gradually, and then you can write things on your blog. You can inspire your friends, right? What to do in terms of reducing GHG and making the world a better life for climate. In Indonesia, we have a group of youths. They're called Pandawara. I don't know if the Indonesians in this class knew them, but they take the challenges of cleaning beaches by themselves. So they invite local communities to help them clean beaches from trash. That's very inspiring, actually, and that's very environmentally and also climate friendly. And if you can start things like that, it would be great. But if not, you can start from yourselves also. Okay, Mas Dul, is my time up?
Okay, yes. Thank you, Professor Linda. Thank you for your amazing lecture in the morning. Maybe because the time is up. Yeah, this is very interesting topic to learn. On behalf of the Forestry GM Summer Course, Managing Forestry Landscape and Forest Dependent Communities to Bridge the Future, Learning Across Governance Regimes. Thank you all for making time to join us here today. And now I would like to return the time and place to the Master of Ceremony. Thank you so much. That's all from me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, Dr. Linda, for your comprehensively presentation. We are so thankful for today, your presentation. It's so complex to understanding very well about the climate change. And from what I got of the presentation, we can start it from our daily life. We have to be more aware in our surroundings. Like we can use Tumblr and use public transportation to as a one way of our campaign of the climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, because of the first presentation, the first topic already ended, please raise from your seat because we have to take picture together in front of here with Dr. Linda. Okay, you can stand up, please, and forward in here. We have to take picture together. in a half. Please everyone make in a right side and then in the left side. So Dr. Linda can be together with us.